All right, so looking at the tests that I wrote a test for all of my classes. Well, the majority of my classes, I wrote a test for forms, investors, user script, and watch list tests, as well as adding fixtures that created an investor object. Also created investor tuple, so it would be what would uh, be an example of what is coming from the database. And then it creates a watch list tuple, and then it creates a test schema. So that way we can run some tests on the database as well. So looking at our first tests, these are under class tests. We import unit test, and we get test case from unit test. We create a class test form. Then we have the tests, so they know for a fact that this is a test because it says test is the first word. And check password against criteria. Results checks the password, that the password meets that criteria of what we originally set, which is this right here, checking this regex to make sure that it falls within that. And we are asserting that it says the passwords do not meet the requirements. The second test is basically checking that the password initially, or the initial password doesn't match the password that is sent in the second time. So CMDM 10501. So that actually checks that checks the password against the criteria. So yeah, this is actually going to pass. And then this one says your passwords do not match because this is CMDM 10501. This one's CDMDM 10501. So a very small difference, and we'll run those here in a second. Looking at our investor tests, once again, we import unit tests and we import our fixtures. So we create our setup and teardown, create investor tuple. Using that in our test, we assert that the subscription checker is going to come back as true because the date has been updated. We set that the investor tuple. What did we set that investor tuple to? We set the date to 2024 11111. And obviously we set it to 2023 12/1. So when it comes back true, it's going to say that the subscription is due. So when we go to here, investor list investor, we change the subscription date to today's date, and we turn our investor tuple. Okay, so we convert it to a list. That way we can adjust the parameter, or the index 20, which is that one where it says none, to today's date. And then we turn it back into a tuple, and then we test it saying that the subscription checker is going to come back as false, saying that the subscription is not due. The other one we've got is our user scripts test, where we're testing a new run of the user script where it checks the length of the schemas in the database, and then it runs the new user script, which adds a new schema to the database, which is in this case called test-4242. And then it counts the schemas in the database after running that, and it asserts that the new user count is one more than what it was to begin with, and then it drops the schema to remove it. The watch list tests, We're testing to check for duplicate watch lists because we can't have duplicate watch lists. They are, they are a primary key as well in the database. But we're avoiding the fact that it has to check the database like that. So, watch list 1, we create a watch list using our fixtures, and then watch list equal watch list 1, so we basically set it as an array or a list, and then we assert that checking for duplicates, watch lists test 2 would come back as false because we're trying to put in another watch list by the name of test 2, and this one is called test 1, so there is no duplicate, and then, or it's just called test. And then the second time, we're asserting that when we try to insert a new watch list called test, which is a duplicate, it will return true. So let's go ahead and we will run those tests. There, contacted SQL. Create a SQL connection, then it deleted the schema after it ran, and it ran 4 tests, but technically it's more than 4 tests because we're running multiple tests within one function. And it came back good. So that's all good. Thank you for watching. I'm trying to get to it. So I just realized after watching that video that you could not see the tests that I ran. I cut off the screen for some reason. So I will show you. There it is. Connection made to MySQL. Then it deleted the schema after it ran the tests. It says it ran 4 tests and they all came back good. So if we wanted to change something, for instance, that would be a little too easy to change. Subscription checker. So say for instance we were in our code and we go to our investor object or investor class, and we put this as greater than instead, and then we ran our tests. One of them, or a couple of them, was going to fail, as you can see. Failure 1. False does not equal true, and the test was the subscription checker. So if we go back in, we change this back, now we're good to go on that. If we, for instance, watch lists, if we didn't have our watch list as a list, then we're going to get a failure on that as well. Error. 4 tests. An object is not subscriptable. And check for duplicate watch lists is where it failed. So that's just to show you a little bit of how we can make the test fail as well.